because as a recruiting tool to try and refill the ranks of the shrinking ranks, organized labor has found a niche in government workers. But there's a ceiling over how many people can be recruited, how many people can be organized, because there's only so many government workers. So they're refocusing on the private sector. SEIU claims to be the fastest growing union in the nation, and under Andy Stern went from something like 1.6 million to claiming to have over 2 million members. And other unions are also refocusing their organizing efforts. Another crisis or another challenge facing unions is that very often through multi-employer pension plans that are run by unions and representatives of management, of employers, but they are there for the pension for union members. Many of the plans in this country have gone way down in their fiscal health. I tracked this data from '96 to 2009 of some of the national funds, some locals have their own funds. The trend is clear. It used to be that for every 4 people working in industry, they were supporting one person that was retired or a family beneficiary that was receiving pension benefits. Today that ratio is more like 1.5 to 1. Used to be in the 80s, I think 90% of, or 95% of the funds were fully funded. They had $1 in assets for every $1 in obligation. This tracks their financial health, and today that number's dropped drastically. And with the lowering membership and lowering unionization numbers in our country, less and less employers are actually unionized. What happens to organized labor's business model? The more people they have and the more employers they have, the more contributions being made to pension funds, the more individuals they have in ranks, the more employers they have supporting the funds. This is a motivation why we're seeing a resurgence of organized labor as to why they are very much trying to refill their ranks to where they were in the 50s. Union political activity. Organized labor and the AFL-CIO and Change to Win, they have a political arm. It's not going away, it's vibrant, it's busy. In 2008, a presidential year, $450 million was spent on politics. In 2010, labor spent more than $200. ASME alone, the Association of Federal, State, and County Municipal Employees, a government union, spent $85 million. And then came out in the paper with the statement, yes, we are the big dog. The political activity of organized labor is not going away. Again, they're exercising their right to free speech too, but the money is coming from the ranks of members, either through dues or through contributions, more individuals that are in union ranks, more individuals to support the political activities. So that's why the motivation was there. And when the administration changed in 2008, and there was a list of things going forward in a wish list, basically it comes down to a couple of simple things. By the way, I put this slide up because this is what's happening in 2012, which is a presidential year. This is the Senate map of all the Senate seats that are up for election. Blue being Democratic, red being Republican. And the 2 green are independents that usually caucus with the Democratic caucus. And since the Democratic caucus typically aligns itself with labor and the Republicans typically do not, it's going to be a big stakes year for defending ground from labor's standpoint. It's going to be a big stakes year for anyone. Politics are just that way these days. But again, I'm trying to give you the motivation as to why a lot of the things are trickling through the legislature and what's behind them. There's been a strategic shift from legislation such as card check, which was the #1 priority of AFL-CIO. And it would have changed the game on organizing rules. It would have made organizing easier. It would have unevened the playing field. That did not get through Congress. But there are elements of it that we're seeing cropping up, or types of elements of it that are cropping up in some of the regulatory agendas that are working their way through. So we take away the capital, we show in the Department of Labor, and unions and the administration can still influence what's going on in Washington through regulatory action. The overall goals remain the same. Weaken employers' ability to resist, lower the bar for organizing, and find ways through regulation to make these 2 things happen. First step was executive orders. One of the executive orders that Barack Obama signed when he came into office was to strongly encourage the use of project labor agreements, which are pre-hiring agreements made between contractors and unions before anybody is hired. Often they will make sure that certain wages are set, prevailing wages are set, certain benefits. A non-union employer may be bound by this PLA to contribute to a union pension fund or to hire from a union home. They can be different ways. They are bargains. But they also have the effect of discouraging contractors that may not be unionized because it doesn't fit their cost structure. The studies done by Beacon Hill and others, they've shown that in fact when PLAs are used, the costs go up. The bidding pool goes down. And ultimately, as taxpayers, the taxpayers are responsible because this is on government contracts. It's not mandated by this executive order, but it is strongly encouraged anyone using a contract of over $25 million use a PLA. And under is also encouraged. And so they're pushed, and we're seeing more and more of them. There is a discussion of whether they're going to expand it to all projects that use federal funds, not just construction projects. Another executive order was to deny any contractor his expenses if they promote or deter union campaigns, which they deter union campaigns if that's their position. But if they're receiving government funds on some sort of contract, then to deny reimbursement of expenses under that contract. Federal contractors must post notice of union rights. One of the executive orders dealt with BEC rights, and some of you may or may not understand what BEC rights are. But it's the poster that basically tells everybody you have a right to join a union, you have a right not to join a union, and then details a lot of the specifics underneath that. The rewrite of this has been so that the poster now almost appears like a laundry list of all the reasons that you want to consider joining a union, and in the bottom simply saying a short bit about you also have a right not to do any of the above. The reason I bring it up and I talk about it is because, in my opinion, the change of that poster has gone from something very neutrally flavored to very pro-union flavored. And again, I have a difficulty with things that are not an even playing field. And so this is another way that one of the administrative agencies in enforcing one of the executive orders has kind of tipped the balance pro-union. Again, I don't care if a workforce is unionized, as long as it's fair and it's their choice. And as long as the employers and businesses also get the same ability, or the equivalent ability, I should say, to speak out and explain their side. And when we get into the NLRB, we'll go and talk about that. Another executive order was contract employees' right of first refusal. If a business gets sold, then those same employees get a right of still staying on the job. And if they're unionized, I believe that union still has the ability to stay on the job, although I'm not totally certain about that one. More of the focus of what I've been studying, what we're talking about, is things that are happening at the National Labor Relations Board. The National Labor Relations Board is supposed to be a neutral board that administers union elections and decides disputes in a quasi-judicial fashion that may come up and anybody raises objections such as unfair labor practices or undue influence in the particular election, or something happen in the labor management relationship that needs a body to decide whether that's proper or not proper actions. The board right now, well, the board typically has a 3-2 constitution of Democrats, Republicans, Republicans or Democrats, depending on which party is in power. Right now they have a 3-1. They have 3 Democrats on, which is Craig Becker, Wilma Liebman, Brian Hayes, Mark Pierce, and the lone Republican is Brian Hayes. There's another individual that's been nominated, Terrence Flynn. He's a former general counsel for the retiring member that just came off, Peter Schomburg, and he's been nominated but not yet confirmed. A lot of the things the board is indicating they're looking at is overturning previous decisions and precedents, like redefining bargaining units, and I'll get into that more in just a second, or I'll get into it now. But redefining bargaining units, for example, specialty healthcare has to do with a healthcare situation that the board asked for briefs on, and